Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Monday, and welcome to the to the place where we lay it all out. Where we lay it all out and we talk about all the things that are important to us here in the state of Alaska, state business, Alaska stuff. It's what we do each and every day right here on the Michael Dukes Show. Thank you for being part of it with us this morning. Thank you for coming on board and joining us. We've got the first hour of the program today is going to be kind of a hodgepodge headlines from around the state, talking about some issues which we, although they were expected, they were not necessarily, well, they're not welcome. Let's just put it that way. Expected, but not welcome, I guess is how we should put that. And that includes a big discussion on another $160 million or so of spending on schools, which would be forever spending, as well as a discussion of what's going on in the war with Iran and what does that mean more and more for us as we look at it, as far as the price of oil goes, and what does that mean for state government here as well. Those are going to be some of the talking points. Education is a big deal in the state of Alaska. We know that. More and more communities are talking more and more about it, and they're also finding ways to, how do I want to put this? Shirk responsibilities, I guess is how I'm going to put it. Shirk responsibilities as far as what they're doing in their own backyards. The one community that I think we can say at this point has done a decent job of it is Fairbanks, who has made a lot of hard choices and is one of the few communities in the state that is actually appears to be running an actual surplus in their education establishment. We're going to talk about that as well, but there's a lot of things going on there. So hour one is going to be pretty busy this morning as we go through. In hour two, we're going to be visited by Bob Day, who is a brand new candidate for the HEA, Homer Electric Association Board of Directors. Now, we've seen these things play out in the past in the various communities, whether it's GVEA up in Fairbanks or HEA down here on the peninsula, where we have board elections for these community energy cooperatives, and nobody really pays attention to them. Why? Because there's a million other things going on. There's a million other things going on, and you got one more piece of mail in your post office box or in your mailbox that highlighted a board of elections, an election for the board, and it's got some candidates on it, but nobody's really paying attention to it. Except, of course, the special interests who have done a bang-up job, a fantastical job of kind of taking control of these various boards with their special interests, including some of the environmental lobby, the renewable energy crowd, and more, because they have seen an opportunity to push their own agendas inside of these organizations in a meaningful way without having to expend a tremendous amount of money to do so. And so we're going to talk to Bob about that. Bob is looking to bring some, I think, some common sense to the HEA board. Now, full disclosure, I think anybody who's paying an electric bill right now should be paying very close attention to what's happening in their local electrical co-op. I know in Fairbanks they've had what did somebody tell me the other day? It's a 35% increase in electricity and in rates in just the last couple of years. I know that down here on the Southern Peninsula, we've had some rate increases as well. And I'll be honest, the biggest budgetary line item in my budget for the radio stations here is electricity. It is a significant amount of money, like 6 figures a year, significant amount of money by the time you're all said and done. So I would love to see some fresh ideas, some fresh vision in our local electrical co-ops. And I think it's about time that we start talking. I think it's about time we start talking about some of these things in the local community. So if there are folks in Fairbanks, I don't know when the GVEA election is, but if there are folks in Fairbanks who are participating or part of the GVEA Board of Elections, I would love to hear from them as well. Love to invite them on the program to talk about it, because this is something that affects us every day. Every minute of every day, you're affected by this, and you don't even think about it. You could think about all the stuff that's going on in Washington, D.C. as much as you want, but your local electrical co-op board has more power and effect over you than you ever think about. I mean, let's face it. That's one of the biggest bills. That's one of the biggest checks you write every day. Every month, you write a big check to your local electrical co-op to deal with these things and to pay for it, and you're treating it as an afterthought. I know for many years that I did as well. I treated it as an afterthought, and it is one of the things that affects your life more than almost anything else here in Alaska. And yeah, GVEA got a temporary rate increase. Frank says something about they just pre-collected the rate increase. I mean, it's getting to the point to where it is definitely, we're talking about life-changing money. We're talking about, in the long run, life-changing money when you start talking about affecting you to the tune of, $800, $1,000, $1,500 a year in difference. It is a significant amount of money. So we're going to talk with Bob Day about that in hour 2, specifically for HEA. But like I said, if anybody is planning on running for the board in Fairbanks on GVEA or the MEA electrical co-op in the Matsu, I would love to hear from you and love to have you on the program to discuss your thoughts on where your electrical co-op is going. Now, a lot of people, again, aren't paying attention to it because, hey, it's not sexy, man. That's not sexy. They're not running for the power of the purse or to be a legislator or, a borough assembly member with bells and whistles. They're just, it's just the power board. And we've got utilities that are focusing more on, renewables and some of these other things that they're not doing well in Alaska. I mean, the inconstancy of wind, the fact that we live in the dark for half the year for solar. I mean, there's a lot of problems here, yet we've had utilities that have been focused predominantly on a lot of those things while trying to find a way to shut down coal and some of the other things that we have a wide access to with some of the cleanest burning power plants in the nation. We've got gas availability. There's been talk about tidal power. There's been talk about, micro nuclear, so many other things the only thing that keeps us alive in the dark, in the freezing cold of winter, is electricity. And it is a key component to our life. And it's one, quite honestly, that we just are not paying attention to. And we should be. All right. So there we go. That's what's coming up today on the program. We're also going to talk a little bit about the war in Iran. What does that mean for the natural gas development? There's some things that are broken out there, as well as the spike in oil prices, and what does that mean for the state budget as well. Oil has spiked up to $120 a barrel over the last 48 hours. You've seen that spike. It's going up and down, but it did spike up over $120 a barrel. Is it a long-term thing? We have no way of knowing. I don't know if I would count on it. I don't know where the war is going. I don't know how long it's going to be, but to bet on the if come and to think that this is going to last all throughout this next fiscal year to cover it, I would think would be a foolish maneuver because nobody knows. But we'll see. We'll see what happens on this. All right. You know what? I'm going to take a natural break here because I don't want to get into something too deep here because we're coming right up on the break anyway. So we'll take it a minute early and we'll come back. And when we get back, we're going to start talking about some of this stuff. I think we'll start off with the education stuff because you could see the battle lines again are being drawn. And I think there's a little blood in the water here in regards to the fact that oil is starting to spike and they see an opportunity to strike while all this oil fervor is there from the war and everything else. Anyway, we're going to talk about that here in just a few minutes. We're going to be back. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Back with more right after this.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we're in the break right now, continuing on with our discussions and everything else. Hi, guys. How are you this morning? I saw my dad was in the chat room earlier. Hey, Dad. Good morning. I didn't do the weather. I know. It's 10 degrees here on top of the world in Homer, Alaska. No real wind weather alerts. Kind of slowed down. Corey said it's 10 below up in Fox, north of Fairbanks there. 10 below in my foxhole this morning. but seems to have miled it out. I was out yesterday with the dogs yesterday afternoon about must have been about 4:30, 5 o'clock, and it was warm. It was really warm in the sun. Oh, so great, so great. Dodie said, we lived in this house in North Pole for 35 years. We've never paid this much for electricity. Yeah, I mean, it was brutal when I lived there. When I lived in Fairbanks, and I had a house that was built in the 70s. It was not the most energy efficient. We'd done a lot. We'd put a lot of money into it to make it more efficient. But, I mean, we still, I saw such a tremendous drop in my electrical bill coming south. I mean, that was the fact that I saved $5,000 in utilities in the first 8 months alone was just amazing. So yeah, it's gonna be crazy. Yeah, the -3 below in the hook. Thanks, Brian. Brian says he's discombobulated. The daylight savings time is really doing a number on me. Yeah, I think it's weird because the older I get, the weirder. I actually slept in a little bit yesterday, and I got up and I did some stuff and was working on some things, and then I got to bed last night at a reasonable hour, and then I proceeded to lay there for 5 hours. I just couldn't sleep. I don't know why. I don't know why. So kind of, yeah, the daylight savings, something's got to be done about that. I mean, can we just lock it down? Can we just lock it down? I'm just, just leave it where it's at. Leave it at the regular time. And now apparently there's a bill going on across the country to lock it in at the daylight savings time instead of at the regular standard time. I don't know. Terry says she loves it. Who sleeps anyway? I can sleep when I'm dead. Sometimes I feel that way, that I'm dead. And, it's the only way I'm going to get some sleep. Brian says he's scared of the MEA bill. He's been using an electrical heater while his furnace is down. Oh. Yep. But what are you going to do, man? What are you going to do? You just save yourself a multi-$1,000 bill from freeze ups by doing that. Yeah. That bill, every time it comes across my desk every month down here, it's oh man, it's crazy. It's crazy how much that stuff costs. So, Paul says Kodiak electric rates are very reasonable. I wish I had electric heat. I mean, they've got Terra Lake, right? So they've got the hydro project there. I mean, that's Juneau too. Juneau's got a very reasonable rate for electricity because they've got hydro. It's crazy. We need to get rid of that. Willie says, good morning. We need to get rid of that crazy lady from Soldovia and the leftist Louis Flora from HEA. Okay. Yeah. I mean, we need to be paying attention. We need to be paying attention to what's going on in our local, electrical cooperatives to begin with. Please don't say that, says Bill. My house is completely frozen. What?
On the Michael Duke Show, we talk about the serious Alaskan issues of the day in a not so serious way because we just can't be bothered to take things seriously. That's how you lose some hair. The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. So I guess we're gonna dive into this here. We're talking about education funding. Education funding for the state of Alaska, as you know, Last year, we increased the BSA by $700 per student. That was a $200 million forever increase in the state budget. The governor made headlines by vetoing it. The legislature made headlines by overriding the governor's veto as they came back into session this year. But we just knew that it was not going to be the end of it. How did we know? Well, because they said so. They came out and said, after they won and they did this hard-won fight and everything, and then they came back and they said, well, that was a good start. That was a nice start, but we'll be back. And they are. Last Wednesday, the House Education Committee introduced House Bill 374. It would raise the current BSA, the base student allocation, by an additional $630 per student. That means that it would go from $66.60 to $79.20 per student. That's the current goal. And that would cost an additional $158.6 million to be exact, according to Corrine Smith over at the Alaska Beacon. $160 million a year, again, forever. That means between last year and this year, if it were to pass right now, it would increase the school spend by over $250 million a year in perpetuity moving forward. $3 billion, not just a quarter, but $3 billion per year. The author of the bill, Rebecca Himshoot, who has a long history in the educational industry, in establishment, the educational industrial complex, stated that it offered districts more stability by raising funds within the state's complex funding. She said lawmakers decided on the $630 per student figure by assessing the current budget deficits in the state's 5 largest districts by student population. And the proposed funding increase would provide a partial stopgap for those budget shortfalls. Now, what they don't talk about is the fact that many of the funding crises in the various communities in the various districts have a plethora of reasons why they've come about, right? The origins, plethora of but primarily the biggest problem that's causing a lot of these deficits is the decrease in enrollment, the decline in enrollment over the last 10 to 15 years, which is projected to continue for the foreseeable future. Because when you build your funding model on a per student payment and you have a decline in the number of students you have, you're going to make less money. Now, there are other options and other reasons why. Anchorage, for example, spent a whole bunch of one-time money on reoccurring costs. Several other school districts had kind of likened the same thing. They've done some of the same things for their own crises. The school district down in Ketchikan has made some kind of massive misstep, and there's been speculation as to whether it was malfeasance or just sheer ineptitude. They're $5 million in the hole unexpectedly with $5 million of debt. I mean, they've got a huge crisis going on down in Ketchikan right now. But you could see it in a district by district basis that while there's a multitude of reasons why they are this way, the primary driver and motivator is because they have a declining enrollment number. Now, I can tell you, based on what they've said here and what Himshoot and company are talking about, that this is a never-ending solution, because you can prop up the amount you pay per student as you lose students. But the problem with that is you will have to always increase that spend because you will have fewer students if you want the same amount of money. See, because when they say, well, it just hasn't kept up with inflation. Well, those are the gross numbers, right? This is the dollar. This is how much we spent on education 10 years ago, and this is how much we spent on education today. Yeah, but the thing you're not factoring in is that you're not factoring in the lost number of students in between that 10-year period. And so, sure, you'll get your $630 per student increase today, but if you have in 10 years, if you have another 15% decline in enrollment, you'll just have to keep putting more money in to reach. They're trying to do more with less money, or they're trying to do the same for a fewer number of students and to keep the money even. Himshu goes on to talk about the $90 million budget deficit that's faced in the Anchorage School District, the $23 million deficit in the Matsu, the Kenai Peninsula Borough School District with its $8.5 million shortfall, and the Juneau School District's deficit of $6.7 million. The only bright spot in that, again, is the Fairbanks North Star Borough School District, who has a current budget surplus of $2.5 million. After, says Corrine Smith, after it closed 3 schools last year, totaling 7 school closures in the last 5 years. Again, Fairbanks is the only one so far who's been willing to address the problem in a head-on way and say, we have fewer students, therefore we don't need this many facilities. The Anchorage School District, again, has had a 15% student decrease from 2010 to 2025. In the last 15 years, they have 7,487 fewer students. Just think about that. 300 students per school. You've got almost 7,500 fewer students at 300 students per school. Or let's make it easy, 350 students per school. That would mean that they've got 15 schools less worth of kids. That's a small, I'm estimating on the small side. 15 schools less of kids after the last 15 years. What they're trying to do is they're trying to make these school districts whole for the mismanagement of the money and the fact that these schools are continuing to refuse to face the fact that they have a declining enrollment and they're not willing to make these downsizing cuts that they need to make it all work. I mean, this is madness. This is total madness. And by the way, then they started throwing things around like, the schools and the deteriorating facilities and, rising costs for fuel and insurance. The deteriorating schools, by the way, is a whole different kettle of fish. They don't even take the money. The BSA is not part of that's part of the capital expenditures and major maintenance programs. So that's not even the same. But this is the story they're telling you. Well, we're doing it because of the budget deficits in all these communities. Well, if all these communities don't face the fact that they are going to be, that they have a declining enrollment, and by the way, none of them are taking a moment to ask the people leaving the school system why they're leaving the school system, to try and address any kind of why are you leaving? What's more attractive than our school system? They're not even asking that question. Because they feel like they're the only game in town. They don't have to innovate. They don't have to override. They don't have to do any of the things to attract. We should be it. And of course, like I talked about earlier or last month, there's more and more of these people who are now pointing the finger at innovators and different programs that are attractive, correspondence schools, charter schools, homeschooling, those kind of things, and saying they're the problem. Those people are the problem because they're taking money out of our schools. No, they just had enough of the nonsense. They just had enough of the nonsense. And then you go over to Anchorage. Now, I guess I should finish up with this HB 374 for Rebecca Hamshoot. Where is it going? What's going to happen? I don't know. Now, this new the revised revenue forecast, which is supposed to come out in 6 days, it may paint a super rosy picture with oil, over $100, $120. Some saying it could reach as high as $150 or $160. Some experts that I saw over the weekend. I mean, maybe this is just a chance that Hamshoot and company just saw a chance to force this through because they know oil is going to spike hard. Now, of course, we all know that this is a temporary bump, and whether by the word temporary we mean for the next 3 months or the next 2 years, we don't know. But we know that it essentially is going to be temporary, and eventually things will settle out and the price will crater again back down. I mean, comparatively, if you're at $150 a barrel and you go back down to, what was it yesterday, before this whole thing, $67 at a mid-range or, high, it had been as low as 61. Let's just say it goes from $150 a barrel down to 65. That's a cratering. Okay. And if you've just indebted the state forever in perpetuity for $350 million over the last 2 years, and then oil takes a poop right there on the middle of the bed, right? Okay. Then what are you going to do? This is how we get into these situations where we create all these great bells and whistles when the cotton is high. And then when the things drop back out, then we're like, oh, well, now it was a completely preventable crisis. We knew it, but we didn't do anything about it. And so then amid all this, you've got places like Anchorage who have decided to double down on this. Not only are they going to put a $12 million tax on the budget, on the ballot for education spend, now they're also going to put a proposition on the ballot for school bonds, for a new bonding issue. $80 million in bond debt for school construction, upgrades, and renovations, as well as for planning and designing of future projects. Now, the district itself, again, admits to the enrollment drop, 15%, almost 7,500 fewer students. They also note that there's been a subsequent increase in correspondence school students of 137%. That's the increase. That's the increase. And yet nobody in these communities is still asking these people, why are you leaving? Why are you going to correspondence? Why are you going to allotment? Why are you going to charter schools? Why are you going to independent homeschool? Why are you going to Montessori? Why are you doing those things? Why? Nobody's asking those questions. Down to just 41,000 students, the Anchorage School District has now shuttered 5 schools over the past decade, with more on the chopping block, 3 more this year. But despite that, they still have nearly 90 buildings under their control. And again, if you've lost 7,500 students at 350 students per school, yeah, you're going to have to cut down 10 to 15 schools. You're going to have to close that many because you just don't have the warm bodies to go in them. I don't know how much more the Anchorage voters can take, the property owners in Anchorage can take, quite honestly. I mean, it's just one hit after another. And the school thing is the one thing that really debts their property more than anything else. It's just insane. But we knew it was coming. We knew this push was going to be coming out of the legislature because they told us, they telegraphed it. They said it was coming. And then, of course, then they've got Elise Galvin's new bill, the education head tax bill, which is a misnomer because there can't be any dedicated funds. As Rep. St. Clair pointed out from Wasilla, you can't you can call it an education, but there's no Oh, it's aspirational. It's aspirational. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. You aspire to do a lot of things. All right, we're going to have to go. We got more coming up. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. We return with more right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay. What do we got here? Charlie just said, have you looked at your property tax assessment for this year? Mine went up $75,000. I've got questions. Rob said Fairbanks did the responsible thing and closed some schools, and then everyone who pushed for that lost their reelections to the school board. Yeah. That's the deal. I mean, you could see it in these heartfelt meetings where everybody shows up and you're going to close my school, and parents talking about the inconvenience of having to drive an extra 5 miles to take their kids to school or something. Cry me a frickin' river. When did we get so sorry. Brian says the lawmaker arrived at that number, talking about Rebecca Himshoot. He said, I think the NEA arrived at that number, and the sycophant legicritters fell in line. Yeah. My brain is just hurting on this. I'm just looking at some of the comments here. Yeah, increase the BSA with no better outcome for our kids. I mean, absolutely. Let's see. Scrolling down. But hey, we don't need reliable boilers in our schools. We need a puppy palace, said Brian. Right, exactly, right? I mean, we could be replacing the boilers in this high school, which is on the verge of collapse at any moment, but instead, let's spend $33 million on a new animal shelter with its own surgical suite and doctor's offices and light and shadows and doggy therapists and everything else. Rick says, I think a lot of families will pull out this spring. The state's political system absolutely is in the gutter. I mean, we're already seeing an outflow. I closed a story that I kept meaning to get to, and I finally just closed it this morning. It's been on my to-do list, and I didn't do it. But it talks specifically about the outmigration in Alaska, not just the outmigration, but the fact that we're not having babies in this state, that for the first time, the deaths are outpacing the births on top of it all. Kim says Mondays are the wrong time to mention BSA increases. My heart is still recovering from the weekend. I mean, come on. This is what's going on. Yeah, it's crazy. If like with student enrollment down, has the school district administration staffing decreased at all? In some places, yes. In Fairbanks, they literally privatized a bunch of the janitorial, saved about $3 million a year. The person who was pushed for that was Melissa Burnett. Her opponent, who just defeated her in office, came in and said first thing she wanted to do was reinstate all those people. So yeah, that's a man. It's madness. Chat widget. Sorry, guys. I'd like to know if the enrollment decreasing has administration staffing decreased at all. Again, it was the same question. No, not to the same extent by any means. Electric bill, gas bill, all winter now. They need your property taxes. I wonder how many of those will be delinquent. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Corey says, who can afford to have kids? I guess at least people are being more responsible in that matter. I mean, yeah. I mean, having kids is not an easy thing. I mean, I was chuckling with Garrett Nelson on last week. 9 kids. I mean, I thought I was a go-getter and an overachiever with 5 kids. And yeah, that was not an easy road to hoe sometimes with 5 kids. But 9? Oof, man. You guys are getting it. That price was 2 years ago, Mike. Oh, are you talking about the puppy palace? That was the 2 year ago price. I mean, yeah, it'll probably be even more. Yeah. I mean, what's it actually going to cost in the end? Nobody knows. Probably $40 million by the time it's all said and done. I mean, okay. Oh.
Broadcasting across the state from his own private studio with that killer 15-foot commute from the couch. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
I'll have you know that the commute from the couch is a full 25 feet. Okay? The commute from the bed is 15 feet, but the commute from the couch is a full 25 feet. Welcome back to the program, The Michael Duke Show. Thank you for coming in and joining us. We've been talking about the education thing and this forever, perpetual push for more education spend. And again, just to make a point, that if this new BSA increase were to go through, that would mean $350 million increase forever. Well, more than a third. $350 million increase in perpetuity. Okay? Just to throw, I just want to throw that out there. Now, the reason they may be doing that again is because the new oil pricing structure is supposed to be coming out. The new, amid all the war and everything else, the spike in oil prices, many people feel is going to be good for Alaska. Although I had to it was kind of morbid. Senate President Gary Stevens from Kodiak, they had a quote in the ADN about it. He said, some lawmakers are concerned about what's going on in the Middle East and the deaths that have occurred and the destruction. But one of the benefits is there should be some higher oil prices. I mean, does that just not feel a little icky to some of you out there? I feel like that's a little vulture-ish, right? Like, I mean, we're just like, I mean, I'm concerned about the deaths and the chaos and the mayhem and everything else, but let me pick over the corpse. We're going to make over some high oil prices, so that's going to be good for the state. But Ira Samuels over at the ADN wrote this on Thursday, Friday. Now, things have continued to change and progress since then. So like I said, we saw the oil spike up at one point, 120, 125 or $120 a barrel oil. But Alexi Painter, who is the Ledge Finance Division's director, said that even though we're going to see some new prices come out on the 15th with the new spring revenue forecast, the projected revenue increase won't be enough to completely eliminate the need for a draw from savings. He said, barring extraordinary events beyond what we've seen already, I wouldn't anticipate a high likelihood that we'll be able to cover all the supplemental requests without tapping the CBR or a similar item. Now, again, these things change on a day-to-day basis, but wow. Especially after looking at the new supplemental budget, which basically called for drawing $500 million from the CBR. The Senate is expected to vote on a new version of that bill this week. And, it could, they could, because of the new revenues and everything else, 50 million of that supplemental will probably have fallen off because of the increase in the price of oil. So then it'll only be a whopping $450 million instead of $500 million. But for the need to draw from savings to completely disappear, said Painter, oil prices would have to average $105 per barrel through June, which is that's a high bar. That's a high bar. The Alaska North Slope crude hovered just above $70 per barrel in the week preceding the beginning of the Iran conflict. Since then, prices have climbed. As of mid last week, it was like $79 a barrel. On Friday, the crude prices rose above $90 per barrel for the first time in more than 2 years. But again, it would have to average $105 per barrel through June. That's for the whole year period. The average would have to be $105 per barrel, which to achieve that in the April, May, June. So we've only got 3 months left of, 3 and some leftover months left of the fiscal year. I mean, it would have to be $200 a barrel plus to be able to hit that $105 barrel average for the full year. It's just not likely to happen. So while they're all excited about it and they all see dollar signs in their eyes, you've got to understand that that this is a big deal. This is a huge, big deal. The difference between the last projection and the updated one expected next week could translate, said Painter, to roughly $280 million in unforeseen revenue, in free money. $280 million. But when you have a deficit of $1.6 billion, $280 million of revenue doesn't necessarily change things much. And then again, Stevens is, Stevens talking about, but one of the benefits of this death and destruction is there should be some higher oil prices. Stevens went on to say that there is worry that if we get so excited about a change in oil prices that we take our eye off the need for revenues. Oh, okay. That was the true ball there, is that we're going to need to change it for revenues, and it's everything. Senator Lyman Hoffman, a Bethel Democrat who chairs the Senate Finance Committee, said that the budget needs in Alaska are greater than what can be met with higher oil prices. He said, we can't be looking at one-time money for ongoing expenditures, so I think the bigger question is, what are we going to do as a state to balance our checkbook on the long term and address the needs that our citizens expect of us? Well, I guess at least he sees that. I guess at least he, I mean, he says it. Is that going to affect how he votes or how he plans or what the amendment? We can't be looking at one-time money for ongoing expenditures. Why not? You've done it. Nothing's stopping you now. You've done it in the past. All you guys have done it all the time. I mean, what's the big deal? What's the big deal? We'll find more money. We'll create a crisis and it'll be fine. Don't worry about it. Just don't you worry your pretty little heads about it. But yeah, the problem is, of course, is the spike in oil prices is not going to be enough. And then there's a whole thing that, the other effect of this, of course, is the natural gas pipeline apparently is getting a boost now. In Qatar, they've closed most of Qatar's LNG. And Qatar produces something like 80%. Is that what it is? 80%? 20%. Qatar, 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas comes out of Qatar. About 80% of that output went to Asia. And they've closed it all down. So is that good? I don't even know. I don't even know at this point, but you could see they're already sharpening their pencils, and they're trying to get taxation stuff built in and everything else on the Alaska gas line in the legislature. They're already starting to talk about how do we tax them as well. I don't know. This whole thing is, again, it's never too early to start day drinking. All right, back with more of the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Okay. Welcome back. I just saw Bob Day in the green room, and now his camera's gone off. So I don't know. I was going to bring him on to test his audio. Hey, there you go. All right. Hi, Bob. I'm going to add you to the stage just for a moment. We're going to test your audio. How does that sound?
It sounds great. Hello, Michael.
Bob, you have to turn your microphone on.
All right. Brand new here.
Going to get some technical support there. Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Okay. I can't hear you, which means your microphone is probably not turned on.
Earlier
Yeah.
when
Can't hear you.
we were
So if you've
testing
got
it,
an
it was
external
on.
mic, you need to make sure it's plugged in. Otherwise, you may want to disconnect and reconnect just to make sure that your microphone is being picked up by the web browser.
10-4. We'll be right back.
So, okay, you guys want to disconnect and reconnect? Try that again. When you get to the connection screen, make sure they can hear him. Oh, you can hear him? That's because I had a button mashed. Damn it. All right. No problem then. It'll be fine. The problem is you, Mickey. My name's not Mickey. You'd think you'd know that. As much as you've mocked me over the years, you'd think you'd know that my name is not Mickey. It's not how you spell Mikey, but there you go. All right. We're gonna get it back here. I'm scrolling backwards here to see if there's anything else. The draw from the CBR will go down, but the supplemental spending isn't going down. Just the funding for it is changing. Sadly, the new BSA bill was drafted before the conflict. When asked, the sponsor said they know we can't afford it, but that's their constituents' want, so that's how the independents govern. Yeah. All right. Okay. Bob, don't. Hey, that was a me problem, not a you problem.
Okay.
I can hear you now.
All right. Can I turn up my volume here, Miss Marie?
Okay.
Oh, they're on the phone.
There you go.
Yeah, I think we had a headphone feedback.
No, it was a me. I had you muted on my end. I didn't realize it, so it was a global mute on my end. So we'll see if we can figure that out. Okay, mute you just for a second. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you very well now.
Okay. All right. Good. All right, Bob. Well, we're going to be to you here in just a minute, and we'll get stuff started. And that's right. You got to have your. I mean, I wish I had a person in here telling me how good I looked and making sure my hair was did before we got going on. All right, Bob. Well, we're going to be to you here in just a minute, okay? And we'll get started and we'll kick things off.
Not a problem. Thank you.
Okay, hold the line. I'm going to pull you back in the green room. Don't touch a thing. It's all working perfectly now. All right. Let's go over here. Like the operation you've patched together. Yeah. Okay. Good morning, Donna. I guess Donna's in the chat. Oh, there we go. Donna says I hear him. I saw Donna. Hello, Donna. Good to see you. It's good to see you. $4 for heating oil in Fairbanks today. Hey, I remember in, what was it, 2007? Was it 2007 that oil spiked up to $150 a barrel? And I had to get my heating oil filled for the winter. And it was $6,000 to fill my tank. I remember that. That was the year that we got that bonus dividend energy rebate payment from Palin. I remember that because that was the only way that I could fill my 1,000-gallon heating tank, because it was over $6,000 to have it filled up all the way, which meant it wasn't even empty. It probably still had 100 gallons in it. So I paid $6,000 for 900 gallons of fuel. You know, it was, I mean, just crazy. Absolutely. And that, of course, you know, didn't count the electricity, which in Fairbanks was, man, big money for electricity. Big money for electricity in Fairbanks, almost as big as what I pay down here. I mean, for what I'm paying down here, I could own a McMansion for what I'm paying down here on a monthly basis. It's going to be interesting. And yeah, like I said, could be they bumped up over 120 briefly. It could go back to that. It could be 150, could be more, depending on how long this lasts, what the targets are like, and where it goes from here. And you know, just you wait. Just you wait to see what life is going to be like. I saw a picture downtown LA, $8 a barrel, or excuse me, $8 a gallon for gasoline in LA. You may want to top off your vehicles today just to be sure, because next week, who knows, could be even more. Don't even know at this point. All right. We're going to be back. Bob Day up next, the Michael Duke Show. Common Sense Radio. We'll return right after this.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome, party pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Hey there, hi there, ho there. Welcome back to the program. The Monday edition of the Michael Dukes Show continues on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator, live across the state of Alaska, and also, of course, on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com, where the audio-only live stream is up, as well as links to our social media sites, Facebook, YouTube, and Rumble as well. All right, we're going to change gears just a little bit here. As I was talking about earlier in hour one of the things that affects each and every one of us, whether you're a landowner, a renter, a landlord, a person, I mean, any of us here in the state of Alaska, is the price of our energy. It affects us in our day-to-day lives in ways we don't even think about. And of course, when you get that little thing in the mail from your local electric cooperative, and I don't care who you are, GVEA, MEA, HEA, you look at it and you go, oh yeah, and you throw it in the junk mail, right? You don't even pay attention because you just, you're more focused on what's going on in Washington, D.C. than you are what's happening in your own backyards. I would argue that, again, what's happening at your local electric cooperative is having more of an impact on your day-to-day life than anything that's happening in Washington, D.C. Anything. We're just not paying attention to it. And so I have committed to trying to bring more of this information to light and bring some of these board votes and things out there and to talk to candidates, because this is important. And so in light of that, and again, if anybody wants to run for the GVEA board or for the MEA board, I'd love to hear from you guys as well. My email is me@michaeldukeshow.com. You can see it right there on the screen, me@michaeldukeshow.com. Send it to me. Meanwhile, down here on the peninsula, we have Homer Electric Association, and Bob Day is a brand new candidate for HEA Board of Directors. And I'm going to bring him on today, and we're going to talk about it. Good morning, Bob. How are you?
Good morning, Michael.
Thank you for coming on board, my friend, and joining us. I appreciate it. So, Bob, first and foremost, tell us a little bit about, who you are, where you come from, what's your background, and let's get started there.
Okay, well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and your audience. And in light of some things you've just said, and this will tie in later on, and we'll go back to who I am. But where I am, I'm in Long Beach, California right now. We had a vacation planned. We came to
Oregon and drove a car from Oregon to California. Last week, the prices of gas in Oregon were right around $4 and change, $4.30, $4.50, depending on where you were. As soon as we crossed the border into California, and I mean within 2 miles, the prices of gas went to $5.50, $5.70 for, and this is for premium. Anyway, the prices went up immediately right across the border. So there's something else going on besides just the cost of oil. But the reason I bring this up is we're looking at getting flights back to Anchorage and then to Homer. And Tina, my wife, said, oh my gosh, they're really expensive. So that's already hit the airlines, this cost of fuel. So but why this all comes back together is we live in a global environment. And when the cost of fuel goes up elsewhere, the cost of fuel in Homer goes up, as you've noticed filling your tank. It's a worldwide thing. And if you think about it, if the oil producers can get $10 more selling it into California. Why do they ship it to Alaska? They want to get the same price up there. But this is a struggle for any co-op in Alaska, as we face the same problems. We have men and equipment, very skilled people that work on this equipment and these power lines. They have trucks and equipment. They have to be fueled. And all of these costs are, and this is key because for the most part in Alaska, we have member-owned cooperatives. That means that all the people that pay an electric bill, you included, are members. You own the cooperative. And that's why you get this really weird thing after a couple of years, capital credits. It's really because you've been a member and the utility, the cooperative, has done well, and here's a refund on the money that you've invested. It's never anything near what you paid, because what you pay is all those costs, all those day-to-day costs of people and equipment.
Right.
And I like to think of the utilities as being on a three-legged stool. You have the cost of people to run the place. You have the cost of fuel, which is a huge thing, to burn fuel and generate electricity. And the third leg of that stool is the cost of capital. When you drive around, you see all the power lines, the power plants, the transformers on the poles everywhere. It costs money to buy those things and put them in place. And so that's the cost of capital. And it's not just the energy cost. That's just a third of the whole thing at most. And I digress. You asked a question, and I haven't gone back to it.
You're going Maverick on me here, Bob. Tell me before we get into the nitty-gritty details of it, tell me a little bit about Bob Day, who you are, where you came from.
Okay, fair enough, because I just get really excited about the electrical system. Like many people, I came to Alaska on a kind of a random thing, but ended up coming to Alaska in 1977 to work for the Corps of Engineers. I was there for 3 months and got a way better job working for Municipal Light and Power in Anchorage. And I worked there for about 20 years, thereabouts. Then got an offer to come to Homer Electric and work. And it's like, yeah, I want to live on the Kenai. That to get out of Anchorage and go to a real part of Alaska. So I did that and moved to Homer in 2006. And I've been a resident of Homer full-time ever since then. Now I say full-time, but there were a lot of times I had to travel to work on the power plants at Nikiski and Soldotna. So I've spent 50 years thereabouts, maybe 49 years in the 49th state, working on the electrical facilities and helping to design and build these things, including what is now the Alaska Fairbanks Intertie, to help Fairbanks with their costs, because we could ship power to them at the time, 14 cents a kilowatt in Fairbanks and 6 cents a kilowatt in Homer. So split the difference and everybody wins. That was the plan for the Alaska Fairbanks Intertie. I also spent a lot of time working on the design and build of the Bradley Lake project, a renewable project that has exceeded, it's just, and this is a problem going back to the three-legged stool, is hydro plants are extremely expensive to build, but there's no fuel cost. So you have to put the money up front, and then hopefully things will change over time and they become very, very economical. And then I wish we had a lot more Bradley because it's renewable.
Yeah.
I already, well, maybe that's too much, but I was actually a resident of Utah. That's where I was born. I went to college at Brigham Young University, graduated there, and kind of beat around the bush looking for a good job, and got this job offer to go to the Corps of Engineers in Anchorage. And that's how I ended up in Anchorage.
Nice. So you've got a huge amount of institutional knowledge on how the system works, how the sausage is made, what's going on, what works and what doesn't. What has made you decide to run for the board, Bob? I mean, other than obviously you get very excited about the discussion around power generation because obviously it's your life's work and it's your passion. But what made you decide that you wanted to throw your hat in the ring here on this? Which is, again, I said it earlier. You weren't with us earlier, but I said, nobody's paying attention to it because it's not sexy, right? Being on the board of an electrical co-op is not a sexy position. It's not necessarily one with a lot of power, like a legislative position or something. What made you decide to jump into this race?
Well, you kind of indicated a couple of things. Is one, this is really electrical costs is really fundamental to the people on the peninsula. I mean, it's really difficult to say. Some people live without electricity, but try it. It's really, really hard. We have this wonderful thing called electricity that you turn on the switch, you start the dishwasher, all these great things happen. But as being on the board, we want to be accountable and say, look, we have to remember that there's the single mother out there with 2 children trying to get by, trying to make ends meet. And so it's really important to do your best to keep the costs down. There's a lot of that 3-legged stool you don't have control of, but there are some things you do have control of in terms of keeping costs down. And along with cost, you've got to maintain reliability because electricity that's unreliable is not very good electricity. And there's a lot of techniques and things you can do, but all the things you do go back to costing money. And the third is there's this big push for renewables. Just last week, I'm building a shop and I put some solar panels on that shop because I really want to find out, does this make sense? And the ground has changed there because the federal government has reduced all the rebates or stipends, call them what you are, for renewable energy. So a different way of thinking of it is renewables have actually increased in cost by 30%. So because those stipends have gone away. So you've got to balance the use of renewables and their cost and whether or not they contribute to reliability. All those 3 things, and I overuse this stool, 3-legged stool concept, but if any one of those is out of balance, the stool doesn't work very well. And metaphors always break down when you go too far with them.
Right.
But I retired from HEA a couple of years ago and really missed being a part of that operation, that system, because again, for 50 years, I feel like I've done my very best to remember the members and keep costs down. So I've had time to retire and I've got time to contribute and give back to a company, an industry that's given me a really interesting life because I look forward to going to work on Mondays, which sounds like a real sicko, but man alive, it was fun. It was great. And we got to make decisions like building the Alaska Fairbanks Intertie and saving Fairbanksians tons of money over the years.
You're talking about 14 cents a kilowatt hour in Fairbanks, and I'm like, "Ooh, the good old days! Holy cow!"
This was 1990. This is a long time ago. It was gone up by then, but there's still everyday sales to Fairbanks, which is really a way of sending the gas from Cook Inlet to Fairbanks.
Yeah, up north for sure. All right, Bob Day is our guest. We're going to continue with him here in just a moment, but we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue with him, talk about what he sees as being some of the biggest challenges that we're facing, and we'll be back. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We return with Bob Day right after this.
Tune in Friday for our weekend entertainment and movie streaming review with our guest critic, Willie Waffle. That's actually his real name. Really? That's his real name?
Great.
Man, his parents must have hated him. The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we're in the commercial break right now. So it's just me and Bob and 50 of our closest friends on the internet for the next 4.5 minutes here as we wait for the commercials to play out on the radio. Bob, yeah, I mean, I was just talking about, the 14 cents a kilowatt hour. I mean, that is the good old, it's twice that now in Fairbanks. And I don't remember what I should have looked at my last bill here before we did this from HEA, but, it's significantly higher than that here in Homer as well, and that's one of the big part of our problems, right? I mean, somebody said earlier, who was it? It was somebody from Kodiak said, "My electricity is pretty reasonable out here in Kodiak. I like it." Well, yeah, it's because you got Terror Lake. You're again talking about the hydro, right? You got Terror Lake, you got Bradley, you've got the one in Juneau. Juneau's only paying, I don't know, like 8-9 cents a kilowatt hour because they've got the hydro out there, and everybody else is, and let alone the villages. We didn't even get, we haven't even talked about the villages yet who are paying, you know, 80-90 cents a kilowatt hour. It is the cornerstone of what we do.
Oh, you're absolutely right. Kodiak is unique in that they have a significant amount of renewables there, and they use Terror Lake to play against the wind production because as the wind dies, they run Terror Lake up, and as the wind comes up, they run Terror Lake back down. And hydro is great because the fuel stays in the lake if you don't use it. If you're running the wind against diesel or gas turbines, you waste a lot of thermal energy doing that following. So Kodiak is really special. They're a standout in terms of the integration of renewables. But renewables, wind, it's location, location, location. You got to have a place where the wind blows not hard, not everybody says, oh, it's really windy here. But usually that means it really blows once in a while. You want a place with a steady breeze. You want a place where people say the wind never stops. That's the place you want. So if you go to Kodiak, they're up on a big ridge, way up high.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and we've got, and I want to get into the renewable stuff because again, there's, the problem with renewables is dispatchable power, right? That's what we call dispatchable power, which is the constants or consistency of the power. And the biggest challenge with a lot of renewables, not hydro specifically, not nuclear, but or even tidal stuff, but especially with wind and solar, is the dispatchable aspect of it. It can never fill a whole need because you can't count on it, right? 24 hours a day.
That or moment to moment. Clouds move in, the wind stops blowing. All of a sudden, you've got to make that up somehow, and you've got to be like at the ready, a moment by moment, and that costs money. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
So renewables, solar, wind, they have a really wonderful cost of fuel, but they're not dispatchable, and that adds other problems to the utilities need to meet electricity needs moment by moment. I don't want to reuse that phrase, but
it's a challenge for sure. And that, as you pointed out, now that the federal government has stopped subsidizing a lot of these things, it's kind of showing, the problem is that there's been kind of this false market with all the subsidies from the federal government on the variety of green energy things. And now that the federal government has stopped subsidizing it, we're finding that they're not nearly as affordable as we've been led to believe. Right? Oh, it's so affordable. It's so this, it's so that. Let me start with that, Bob, because we're about to rejoin the radio. I forgot to go.
Okay.
I forgot to show you the little timer over my head, which shows you how long we have to get back to it. So we're only 23 seconds out. So
all right.
We're gonna rejoin, and then we'll go back to this question because I think this is going to be one of the challenges that we face. And so we'll get back to this question here in just a moment. So hold the line. Bob Day, our guest candidate for the HEA board. We're going to continue. Please like and share this show. If you haven't yet, like and follow the show page, do all that stuff. Let's get to it.
As Michael always says when he's tucking me into bed, no man's life, liberty, or property is safe while the legislature's in session. Oh, wait a minute. That was Mark Twain. Oh, well, still true, though. Michael Dukes, we only steal from the best.
Yep. We're continuing now. Bob Day is our guest. He's a candidate for the HEA board. I want to talk about renewables and some other stuff. But before we get to that, before we get down into the nitty-gritty and the weeds, let me ask Bob, what is the biggest challenge that is facing HEA that you know, as a board member that you would like to tackle? What's the biggest challenges for the next 5, 10, 15 years for HEA down here on the peninsula? What do you see being the big problems?
Fuel. One word, fuel. And somebody in the comments talked about cheap natural gas. Cook inlet gas is expected to run out in the near future, and that is a really big problem. There was recently a tract offered for drilling opportunities in Cook Inlet, and they got 0 bids. Nobody was interested in making that expensive proposition to go out there and drill for more gas. And the current gas is projected to run out, and the gas companies, the producers, are not willing to sign contracts because they're afraid they're not going to have product to sell. And if they sign a contract, they have to. That's part of the contract usually, is they have a commitment to sell that. So we're, as silly as it sounds, we're seriously talking about importing LNG back into the peninsula in order to feed our gas needs. And this is going to be a huge, huge problem. And I don't have a really good answer, but it's going to take a lot of work to avoid a curtailment of gas on the peninsula and Anchorage and elsewhere.
I mean, it is. And of course, it's unfortunate. I would love to be burning Alaska gas today here in Alaska, but it's unfortunate that the most affordable solution to this whole thing is to import gas from somewhere else. That is shocking to me, but it is the answer that we have to have if we're going to continue to try and live at a reasonable rate, right? I mean, we've got to do something because it's just a finite amount of gas for what they have right now, and nobody's willing to take those risks.
You're absolutely spot on, and imported LNG is most likely going to be more expensive than homegrown gas. And if we can induce someone to make some more homegrown gas, all the better. But these are really risky propositions to drill gas wells, and the member-owned cooperatives are really not in a position to risk that kind of money on what might turn out to be a bust. It would be a terrible thing for the members. So really, if Cook Inlet gas is not available, the only alternative is to import gas. And keep in mind that about 10% of the power on the rail belt, Fairbanks to Seward and Homer, comes from Bradley Lake, a good, solid, renewable, dispatchable resource. And an aside on Bradley, we'll go back to that. But 90% comes from coal and natural gas. So we are married to fossil fuel for the near future. And I know it has its downsides, just as we talk about some downsides for renewables, but it's all in a balancing equation, trying to best answer, considering all the variables and coming up with one. And that's why my motto is affordability, reliability, and renewables. We want to balance those three things so they make sense.
Well, and let's talk about renewables, because there's been a huge push across the country over the last 20 years in renewables. And unfortunately, part of the problem is, as you mentioned earlier, the federal government has stopped subsidizing renewables across the board for the most part. And the only reason that a lot of renewables were affordable was because of those subsidies. The fact that renewables are pretty expensive to put in, they have a huge landmass footprint. They have a very short lifespan in the factor of when you're comparing it to a generation plant or something like that, or hydro. Those are very long-term projects where a lot of these things, the solar and winds, I mean, these have got a 20, 25-year lifespan before they have to be reconfigured or completely replaced. And so there is a place for renewables, but is it the magic bullet that many of people, the talking heads and others, and some of the board members have talked about? You can't replace oil, gas, hydro with wind and solar, right? It's just, that's not a feasible thing to do. Am I wrong?
I can't disagree with you, especially coming from the operational side of running an electric utility. So we get 100% renewable, say wind and solar, but it's nighttime and the wind stops blowing. What do you do? Tell your customers, tell your members, sorry, no electricity today, come back tomorrow? No, you have to have alternate ways, which usually involve, at this point, fossil fuels, nuclear. People might talk about battery storage, but like you say, these batteries, these wind turbines, these solar panels usually involve some very exotic materials, which are very difficult to repurpose or reuse or recycle. Lithium is really a bad news metal, but it's in all the batteries. And anybody that's run a DeWalt or Milwaukee drill or saw that runs on batteries knows that after a couple of years, they don't work. They're dead. And I guess there's some businesses that'll recycle your batteries in your automobile when they go bad, but I don't think we've really matured that industry to the need. And the fiberglass in the wind turbines has a, what do you do with a cracked wind turbine blade? Take it to the dump? I don't know exactly. But all these things have costs, and people can talk about fossil fuels, and they have a cost because we're putting carbon into the industry. But how do you balance all these things, and how do you balance the cost, again, to that person that's trying to get by? I'm in California right now, and I see a lot of renewables. And as you say, the solar panels take up this huge growing space. The solar panels on the roof of the house next door, they're helpful, they're useful. But when they get to be a major source of the generation mix, it presents those dispatching problems that your returns may not be as good as expected, like they say in the prospectus. I also I'll go way back, but I remember an ad campaign on TV where they do stuff, and then this woman with the flowers around her hat would go, "It's not nice to fool Mother Nature," and then lightning would come or some other thing, and you know, in some ways, this is the world we live in. We don't just leave footprints in the sand. We kind of mess things up by living.
Right.
It's the nature of life.
Right. So what kind of balance should we have? I mean, if I made you king for a day, what would our balance look like as far as full dispatchable power, whether that be coal or gas, because we have, again, one of the largest, cleanest burning supplies of coal in the world here in Alaska. If we could get gas to a system, to a pipeline, or whether we import it, or even renewables like hydro, those are great because they're fully dispatchable. But what does the balance look like to Bob Day if you were going to design a system? Just like you were working back for HEA again, you were going to design a system. What would the perfect system look like in your mind?
What we have right now is not a bad mix of reasonability, renewables, and affordability, because gas turbines are much cleaner than a coal plant. Now, the advantage of having a major plant in either coal or natural gas is you can apply some pollution controls at the point, which are far better than trying to put a pollution control on each automobile. And going back to my 90-10%, renewables right now on the railbed are a pretty small percentage. I don't know if they're even at 3%. That's a number that's kind of escaped me because I've been gone for a year or two. But 3% is easy to deal with, because if 3% goes away, Okay, no big deal. You can cover that. And a higher percentage is probably likely, but most studies I've seen say when you get above 15% renewables, you've got certain problems in terms of covering the dispatch when those renewables are not available. And we're leaving hydro out of this because it's not dispatch, but wind and solar. So if we had 15-20% of wind and solar, we're probably getting less return on those because of the cost of supporting them. And you'd have to support them through batteries or likewise. Now, one of the problems that we had with the stipends for renewables is we had to go through some really crazy machinations in order to um, obtain these federal returns. And that's why Siri owns the wind turbines out at Fire Island. If HEA put in wind turbines directly, they never could get the stipend because they don't pay income tax. They're a member-owned cooperative.
Right,
So
right.
you had to go to some external company and they would put in the wind turbines and get the rebate. And then you would sign a contract to buy the power from them, which is exactly what Chugach did. Um, HEA was offered that same deal, and we turned it down at the time because it just didn't make sense to our members. The price at the time, I recall, was they paid 110.7 cents a kilowatt hour for power from the wind turbines, and uh, Siri paid Chugach a tenth of a cent for dispatching services. And I'm struggling with those numbers because I usually talk in megawatt hours because kilowatt hours are too little, but
Right.
kilowatt hours is usually what goes in the house. But that was like 5 to 10 cents. Sorry, I'm slipping my numbers there. It was about 10% to 20% more than the cost of current generation. But Chugach did that because the members said, yes, we want renewables. We are willing to pay more. So they did.
Right, right.
Fine, good. Uh, but there is a cost to regulating those wind turbines. Now, HEA has chosen to put in a battery system at the Soldotna plant. As you drive out of Soldotna towards Anchorage, you'll see a line of white boxes there on the side of the street at the power plant. And that's a 93 megawatt hour power plant. Basically, HEA can run their system off of those batteries for a little less than an hour, which enables you, if something suddenly goes wrong, to, let's use the batteries. But the batteries are just like an angel share. You put in 100 megawatt hours and you get out 90. There's always a cost of conversion.
Right.
And so these things are not 100%. If you do a pump storage, uh, you pump water into a lake and then you use it and run it the other direction, which, by the way, you can't do at Bradley because of the way it's built. But if you were to do this, you get 75-80% of the energy back because there's a cost of doing business. There's always the angel share, the devil share, whatever you want to cost it. So the perfect mix is close to what we had. I'd love to have more hydro, but hydro is really difficult because you have to have elevation, you have to have a lake. I mean, this will be really controversial, but as an engineer, hey, let's build a dam across the Kenai River. We could generate a lot of electricity there, but people would kill you.
Right.
Salmon, oh my God, what are you? Blasphemy.
Right. Well, no, I've
But-
often said that hydro is really one of the ultimate forms of power. I mean, Hoover Dam, the dam's over 100 years old. We're still generating huge amounts of power in that dam. The problem, of course, as you mentioned earlier, is the upfront capital costs on a hydro project is much greater than almost any other project out there.
It's astronomical. It's huge. Bradley Lake would, in today's money, would cost over $1 billion with a B, billion. And I'm going to go back to the good old days, but at the time Bradley was built, it was about 4 cents a kilowatt hour. And at the time in Anchorage, we were generating power for 2 cents a kilowatt hour. And it's like We don't need no stinking Bradley. That's why would we buy power that's twice as expensive as what we can produce it? But now Bradley power is about 4.2 cents a kilowatt hour. There's certain expenses that have gone up, labor, fuel, all those other things that you use to support it. But the capital cost just paid off. And so Bradley is like a gold mine.
Right.
And so we put in Battle Creek out there to add about 10% more water to the lake, which is 10% more energy. Um, Bradley is still 4.2 cents, and the cost of gas has gone way up. We used to pay 22 cents an MCF at MLP way back in the good old days. Now the cost of gas at HEA is somewhere around $7 an MCF. Huge increase.
Yeah.
If we had 5 more Bradleys, I'd be totally happy. Totally.
Right, exactly. No, that's part of the challenge. Bob Day is our guest. We're going to continue here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. We're up against the break, so we'll be back in just a moment. And we'll have more conversations with Bob, and we'll summate up and how folks can support him to become a member of the HEA board. We'll return in just a moment. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
We're broadcasting live through a series of tubes.
Allowing all of these entities to provide streaming stuff going on the internet.
Well, it's kind of hard to explain. Sorry. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
Okay, we are in the break right now. Bob is our guest. Rob Myers just said, Senator Rob Myers just said, AEA is building the Dixon diversion, which will increase the Bradley Lake capacity by about 50%. Which again, if we can, make what we have already in place better, great. Otherwise, what about new hydro projects, Bob? What about, Susitna-Watana or any other potential, hydro project out there? I mean, it would be great to have those things, right?
Oh, from an engineering standpoint, yes, it would be wonderful. And I've studied and participated in the studies for Susitna-Watana since the first iteration back in the 70s, late 70s, early 80s. Susitna-Watana has a number of problems which have prevented it from being built. And one of them is it really was going to impact what a lot of people considered a very scenic and beautiful part of Alaska. And that's kind of the downside of hydro. You usually need a lot of elevation. So that's key to hydro. So it's really hard to find a place that doesn't impact recreation or housing or farming or fish and do it effectively. The other problem with the Susitna-Watana is the water flow is very seasonal. And it's not very much in the winter, of course, because everything gets frozen up. And it's a lot in the summer. But that's the opposite of what the electric utility needs. In the winter is when we have high demands on the electrical system. In the summer, not so much. So it kind of like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. If you make it small enough, it'll fit, but sometimes it doesn't fit very, very well. So that's been this very simple explanation of why Susitna-Watana has not been built. If we could find other lakes like Bradley Lake, high, basically Arctic lakes with very little life in them, glacier lakes, those are great possibilities. And you'll read numbers that say Alaska has 90% of all this hydro, but it's in southeast. It's a long ways away. So it takes a really long time or a long power line to get any of that power where it's useful. We're not connected to southeast, so that's kind of that's not in the cards. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And you asked me about how people can contact me or support me. We're just setting up a web page and a Facebook page, and it's bob@bobday.org. They can go there. You'll find it very incomplete today, but we hope to flush it out and finish it this week and get
Good.
those things going.
Good.
And we're just getting this whole thing off the ground and getting started, so bear with us. But if you send comments through the Facebook or email me at bob@bobday.org, I'll do my very best. And the biggest thing you can do to help me is get the word out and say, investigate this Bob Day guy, and
Yeah.
if you can support him. And I really hate to do it, but I've committed my own personal money to this campaign. And if somebody wants to send me $5 to help me out, I'd be very, very happy to receive that. But I
Happy to
think
make
this
it
is
happen. Yeah.
I just think this is my way of doing good for
Yeah.
the society and for Homer, because anything we do to keep costs down, and I'm not going to tell you that costs aren't going to go up. That's the world we live in.
Yeah.
But to
Unfortunately. Yeah.
keep costs down as much as we can, because we're all in this together.
Charlie asks a question from the chat room. What does Bob think about people paying people for power that they generate at home? You talked about putting solar panels on your shop. And of course, there's that. There's a discussion right now on equality of power and what they should be paying. What is your thought about paying people that generate their own power?
Well, we can get into a little bit of the weeds, but you mentioned you hadn't looked at your bill, but I looked at my bill purposely just last week before, and the basic charge for power is 17 cents. That's the cost of generating the power that comes to your house. So if you deliver power back to the system, no problem with paying you the 17 cents, because that's the cost that gets avoided. Then there's the gas cost rate adjustment. And utilities used to get really strung out because the gas prices would change very rapidly. So they built this thing that you say, okay, we're going to base our prices on this this gas cost. And if gas rises or goes down, then they adjust that very quickly without having to go through a whole rigmarole with the PUC or the RCA to get a new tariff or a new new rate established.
Well,
It's not. But okay, to finish that point, my rate for the power I received is 32 cents. Over half of my bill is involved with gas fees, raw taxes on the system, overhead, RCA charges. There's a whole list of things in there. But
hold on a second, Bob.
Alaskan Talk Radio with a host who actually lives in Alaska. I know! Weird, right? This is The Michael Dukes Show. Starring Michael Dukes.
Okay, Bob Day is our guest. He's a candidate for the HEA board. We were just getting into an interesting discussion here as we came back. We were talking about, because there's a whole conversation going on right now about what ratepayers should be paid if they are generating their own power. If you've got supplemental power, if you've got some extra solar panels or whatever, should they be paid at the generation rate, or should they be paid at the full rate? I mean, what? And Bob, you're saying you've got no problem if it's 17 cents a kilowatt hour to produce energy, paying them 17 cents is no problem. But the question is, what if they're asking for the full kick, including fuel costs and everything else, right?
Well, with that price, that 17 cents, I'd include the gas cost rate adjustment, because that's a kilowatt hour that doesn't have to be produced by the utility. So that's an avoided cost. Yeah, fine. You want to bring me carrots? I sell. No, I'm not going to go into that. But yeah, not all those. Now, here's the strategy. If you self-generate, use that power to offset what you're taking from the utility. No excess back to the utility. That's worth 32 cents a kilowatt hour to you personally, because you're not going to pay all those extra charges and the taxes and rate regulation and all that other stuff that's in there. So your self-generated power that you don't put back into the system is worth 32 cents kilowatt hour to you personally. But if you put it back to the system, you need to pay the fuel costs. You should be paid the fuel costs and the avoided costs. Because if you get more, you're basically making your neighbors pay you. And that's not fair to the other members of the co-op.
Right. Right. So as we look at this, what is going to be your mantra as you step in, assuming you get elected? What is going to be your mantra as you step in? What's going to be your marching orders? What are you going to be working on from day one?
Again, it goes back to those three words: affordability, reliability, and renewables. And we need to consider all of those in all of the decisions that are made. The gas supply is going to be a big one, and it's going to affect us greatly. And any renewables that we can put in that make sense is going to help with that system, that gas question, because we're going to need less gas if we can self-generate with good, reliable renewables. And the whole system has to be not a house of cards that's going to fall down and fail you, but a good, reliable, solid system that's operable and secure and is, well, something that's going to be there when you need it. Those three things are going to be major questions with every decision I look at HEA board.
And again, we were talking about renewables in the form of especially wind and solar. Many different boards around the state and across the country have been focusing on that almost to the exclusion of all else. We had Sarah Montalbano on the program recently. She's an energy analyst talking about Minnesota and MISO and their dispatchable power problem. They're expecting to have major blackouts this next summer. And they're retiring fossil generation faster than they can be replaced with other forms of dispatchable power. And that's been a huge part of what they're going on. Is that a problem here, do you think? Are we focusing too much on renewables that don't deliver dispatchable power, or is it a right mix? Where do you think we're at?
As you get more and more renewables, this problem that you're discussing becomes more and more present because renewables are not dispatchable. They come and go as conditions describe. We've got some challenges in some of the equipment that HEA uses for thermal generation, gas turbines and that, is getting to be pretty old. We're going to have to face a replacement here because the machine out at Nikiski was actually installed in 1985 at Soldotna. In 2002, it was moved to Nikiski to work with the Agrium power plant. It was repurposed to be a combined cycle plant, which is much more efficient and saves the members money in 2014 when HEA became independent. And the independency was driven a lot by the fact that we can't depend on our neighbors. There's a single power line that goes north. And people say, oh, we have Bradley. HEA only has about 10% of Bradley. That's theirs. The rest is other utilities. So we have to be self-sufficient and we have to have reliable standby machines that are ready to step in. They may not be the most efficient, but we don't run them very often.
Right.
I have a home generator. I've used it once. I've spent a lot of money putting it in and putting it in properly, but that one day I used it, it was invaluable. I don't care what it cost. It was worth it.
Right, exactly. No, the other thing is, of course, we're seeing a trend now, and even the U.S. government is getting involved with micronuclear, right? Whether it's a small nuclear battery, whether it's a small salt thorium reactor, self-contained. That's a big thing. Is that something that you were interested in exploring with HEA and other remote communities around here?
Absolutely. And I've been attending, there's a working group, a nuclear working group in Alaska, and I've at least been going to their meetings that they meet every so often, once a month, thereabouts. And it's really a good idea for Alaska. But then you have some political hurdles like Homer has declared itself a no nuke zone. I don't know how that fits in with a nuclear battery or a nuclear power plant. in gosh, I'm going to go back to the 2000s, 1990. We met with some people from the Department of Energy, and we're going to put in, they had this concept of you put this nuclear power plant in the ground and put concrete around it so nobody can steal it, nobody can touch it. It's like a cylinder that you encase in concrete in the ground, and it self-regulates, it does all these great things. But under the current NERC regulations at the time, you had to have 25 people to act as guards for this thing. Well, that was a huge cost. It kind of didn't make any sense to put this thing in the ground if you had to have one. Now, I think we've matured since then, and it's a super interesting technology. Are we ready to embrace it? I don't know. I think, again, I'll go back to the engineering standpoint. I think it'd be a huge addition, a great addition. Dispatchable, reliable, 25-year life. Put it in the ground and forget it. I mean, this sounds like a sales job, but I think it has some really good possibilities. But we're a long ways off from that.
All right, Bob, we're down to the last 2 minutes here. And I know you said during the break, you said you're working on your website, you're working on your Facebook page for folks to find out more about you. But if folks want to do that, you don't have the websites up or anything, but you do have an email address. If people have questions, they want to help you out, or they want to ask you questions, how do folks find out more about you?
Well, the best way right now is bob@bobday.org. bob@bobday.org. And I guess I'm not a Facebook guy until last week when we tried to start standing that up. But I guess you go online and look for Bob Day Homer, and don't find Bob Day in Fairbanks, because I got in trouble for that once. And that's a fun story. But that's not me. Bob Day Homer.
All right, Bob Day Homer. Look for Bob Day, HEA, and you'll probably find some links to him. Or you could send him an email. Again, bob@bobday.org. Bob, when is the election, and what district is this in again?
This is District 3, and it is the southern part of HEA. And I'm not sure. It talks about the boundary from Canal Street south. I don't know where Canal Street is, but it appears that people in Kasilof are in our district, and Anchor Point, and Homer, of course, and Seldovia. And all of those people, I encourage them to check me out, take a look. I hope I'm the reasonable candidate. bob@bobday.org.
All right, bob@bobday.org. Bob, thank you so much for coming on board. Interesting conversation. I look forward to talking to you again here in the near future, okay?
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity. I'm ready to talk to anybody anytime about this. It's the love of my life.
All right, well, have a safe trip back from California. Hold the line for just a second, Bob. Folks, we're out of time. We'll see you guys tomorrow with Chris Story, Brad Keithley. Have a good day. All right, Bob, I'll give you one final bite at the apple in case there's something we didn't hit on, or something that you think we should have touched on that we didn't, something you want to expand on. Now is the time to throw it out there at us real quick.
All right, well, I've made my home in Homer, and I've lived there for 20 years now, 2006 to 2026. And I'm a part of that community, and I support that community because I pay the electric bill myself, and you don't get any discount for being on the board or any of that stuff or working there. So this is important to me personally, and important to me as a full-time member of the community there in Homer.
Yeah, it's important to me. I'll tell you right now. I definitely would like to see a lowering, or at least a stabilizing of my own electrical bill, because it's pretty significant for us here at the radio station. Definitely like to see some alternative ideas come in there for dispatchable power, and always looking for a new fresh face to come in there and do it. So Bob, thank you so much for coming out and being part of it today. We appreciate you. We appreciate you coming on board and joining us today. Thank you so much.
Appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thank you. And again, have a safe trip back from Southern California. He's a brave man down there going to sunny CA. All right, my friends, that's it for us today. We are out of time. We got to go. Tomorrow is, again, Brad Keithley, Chris Story, and we will we'll enjoy ourselves then. More deep dives and more. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. We'll see you guys then. Have a good one.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.